this presentation on financial accounting. My name is Davis Michelo. My presentation will be divided into two parts. The first part is to look at what must be done before you enter the examination hall. And then the second part, we are going to look at a particular question on one of the most difficult topics, where we'll demonstrate on how to handle such a question. Right now, the contents of what we are going to do is as follows. 1, examination format. B, must-dos during examination preparations. C, use of 15 minutes reading time. D, the general competencies that candidates must demonstrate on answering these questions. The common mistakes exhibited by students in general. F, we look at the practical question, what must be done during an exam time. Then G, we actually look at other non-examination critical preparations. There are certain things that must be done when you are actually entering an exam. So those have nothing to do with the reading, what you must observe. Then we shall conclude our presentation. The format of the exam. The examination paper in DA1 is divided into 2 sections. Section A is 1 question of multiple questions divided into 10 parts. It carries 20 marks. Then section B has got 5 questions. Next part is actually do's before the examination date. First one, A, ensure you cover the entire syllabus of your subject, as all topics are examinable. Do not handpick certain topics because you'll be disadvantaging yourself. Point 2, ensure that you do as many past paper questions as possible, and as you are doing those past papers, please ensure that you discipline yourself, compare your answers with the suggested solutions, and take note of the areas which you did not actually answer according to the suggested solution. The point is to remember that every revision kit, there will be a mock exam paper. When you have satisfied that you have gone through, you have prepared yourself, do that particular mock under strictly examination conditions. Then mark yourself and see how ready you are for the exams. That is what you should do before the exam time. The next part, students usually do not know how to use the 15 minutes reading time given by ZICA. You are supposed to first scan through the question paper quickly. Then when you have scanned through, you will have an idea of what type of a question paper you are going to do. Second time of reading, start with your requirement. That will direct you to fish out the data that is relevant for each part of your question. And then you actually, if time allows, you need to pick your pencil, come up with your answer plan by using the pencil in the question papers. You can dot down, say, oh yeah, here they want this particular figure. You underline those important parts of the exam data. That way, you would actually be using your 15 minutes profitably. The next part of our presentation or guide is the General competencies. Now, when you look at financial accounting, it is at level 1, a level at which people are starting to actually say, I'm starting this progress, this profession. Therefore, there are certain parts that are very critical for you to be ready for the exam. The following areas need to be read and be understood. 1, the principles of double entry. You need to actually master that particular critical rule. As you develop as an accountant, that is a basic rule which will apply throughout your profession. To understand the basic rule of double entry bookkeeping, because that rule is applicable throughout your life as an accountant, you will need to apply it. 2, you need to actually look at when you go out in the business, there will be occasions when there will be mistakes, some omissions. You need to know how to correct these particular omissions and how to correct these errors. Then there is that particular part where you need to deal with year-end adjustments. That one is actually something that you need to master now, because as you progress in your profession, you will definitely need to know how to include and actually reflect those adjustments at the end. That is under the additional information. And usually, when you are given any transaction under additional information, it means that value will appear twice in your books of accounts, unlike what is obtainable in the trial balance. So year-end adjustment must be mastered if we are to pass this exam. Then we need to actually come to the main theme of the subject, presentation of the financial statements. That is your statement of income, statement of profit or loss. 1, the statement of financial position. 2, the statement of cash flow. And then you have the statement of changes in equity. Those 4 primary documents must be understood at this level, though you will have to add on the knowledge as you develop in the profession. Then the last part is the regulatory framework and the conventional accounting concepts. That is the theory part. And always a good paper will have a part where you need to demonstrate your understanding of these conventions, because you definitely do not just draw up these accounts without basing your statements on these principles. So you need to do that. Common mistakes exhibited by students during exam writing. Okay? 1, when these scripts are being marked, there is that real common mistake where students will just, they are under pressure, but they will just dump the solution without any number. So we are saying, please remember to number your answers. Say, this page 1 or page 2, I'm answering question 2A, question 2B. That numbering of the answers is very important for the markers, the people who are assessing your solutions. 2, failing to go through your answers. It's very common to find when you are writing, you might actually omit very critical words, especially the theory part of your answers. You omit a critical word, then the meaning is completely distorted. So you have to actually find time towards the end, go through what you have done, and you actually find you will be able to see where you rushed or you actually communicated what you didn't want to communicate to the examiner. Third part is poor presentation. We find students not actually remembering that they are communicating to the marker. The recommendation is that students must take time during their exam preparations to say, here's a question, how best can I present this answer? It's an art which must be developed, okay? So remember, you're communicating to the examiner. The examiner must get what you want him to mark. There are times when you find things are not illegible, you can't actually make sense out of it. The third point, you know, this, when you go in an exam, you find here's a part of the question which has got 5 marks. How easy that part is, you can only score 5 marks. So multiply that one by 1.8 to give you approximately how long you must actually take to answer that particular part. You cannot get more than 5 marks. How best, even if you wrote 10 pages on that 5-mark part, you will not get more than 5 marks. The examiner will give you the maximum if you are lucky. So please remember to time yourself to say, what time am I starting this one? What time am I starting this one? At 10:15. Give myself 30 minutes. I will stop. Whatever happens at 10:45, I must stop. Go to the next one. That way, you'll be able to get, for each question attempted, the easy marks will be obtained, while the difficult ones will be left hanging. But you'll be better by attempting the number, like in DA1, out of the 6, you are supposed to attempt 5. Therefore, attempt those 5, and of course, there will be some blanks here and there. Okay? In failing to attempt the required number of questions, if you actually find you are supposed to answer 5 questions and you only attempt 3, it means effectively you are going to be marked out of 60%, and automatically you have disadvantaged yourself. Okay? So try to, in each question there will be easy marks, which you must actually quickly pick up, attempt the required number of questions. That is actually numbering your workings, because you need to cross-reference those numbers. So there are times when you find you've done some working somewhere, and you go there, your workings, you ended up with the wrong answer. There are some components of your answer which are correct. So if you actually cross-referenced in your solution, say working, the next part is arranging these multiple questions. What we find is that students will scatter because they are told in the instruction that each answer must start on a fresh page. Therefore, what the mistake they make is to say page 1A, 1.1a, they go to next page, 1.2c. They will find they will use half of the booklet for the theory part. That is not good enough. You need to arrange them in such a way that in 10 lines, you can actually put the answers for that section. Now, section B. This is the written exam where I don't have the choice. They want you to demonstrate your technique, your skill, your knowledge. Okay? 1, we have to emphasize clear presentation of the answers. You need to demonstrate to the examiner that you know what you are answering. 2, you can start you can start with any question. You don't need to say, no, since I have answered question 1, now I have to go to question 2, I have to do question 2. No. If you find question 3 is easier, start with question 3 first, as you settle down, and number it. As long as it starts on the fresh page and it's written question 3, and in that question 3, there must be some parts which are actually, if there are parts A, B, C, you must clearly indicate this is part A of question 3. So you put question 3A. If 3A is divided into 3 parts again, 3A1, 3A2, 3A3, you actually answer them in that particular order. For theory questions, make use of paragraphs or points. Jot down the points so that you clearly define your answers. It's no good for you to jumble. You actually you are talking about the discount received, then you start talking about discount allowed in the same paragraph. It won't help. If we have asked you on why you actually depreciate assets, you must clearly say this is A1, reasons for depreciating assets, blah, 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 come up with those particular reasons. For each part of the question, it is advisable that you clearly indicate the start time and finish time. That will guide you to say, I started at 10:15, I need to stop at this part. Now, ideal situation is actually to take, for these 20-mark questions, for each question, you are supposed to take 36 minutes. But that means you are supposed to say, look, I will need time at the end of the exam session to go through my answers. So it is advisable for you to say, let me give myself 30 minutes for each question, so that 6 minutes you are saving per question will translate into 30 minutes of going through your answers. That section is very important, is critical, because it actually supplements your answers. You will find the filling in the gaps which you actually, there are some questions which you will have left hanging. That's the time when you can come back to them and actually finish it. The last part there, every question paper will have easy marks and difficult marks to obtain. So you need to actually say, out of this statement of profit or loss, what are these values which are readily available in the trial balance, for instance? Fit them in the format, okay? You'll be aiming to half mark for those straightforward entries. Then you actually now say, look, what do I need to discover this unknown figure? Like in a situation where you're dealing with the depreciation which must be adjusted, or you are looking at the allowances for irrecoverable debts. You will need to work out, and you need to actually say, these are the difficult parts which I need to actually fill in later. You can actually come up with a format, fill in those easy ones, get easy marks, and come to more difficult parts. You are not there to challenge the examiner. You are there to actually get a decent pass. That is the first part, general guidance to what you must do before you go into the exam.
Take your career prospects to the next level with ZICA.
Our diploma in accountancy is an essential qualification if you're planning on entering the accounting profession.
The ZICA tax program at both certificate and diploma level equips you with an enhanced understanding of the field of taxation.
Our diploma in public sector financial management is ideal for accountants or trainee accountants working in the public sector.
And CA Zambia, a respected designation designed to ensure that graduates are highly trained to hold senior positions in the workplace.
You can study through flexible options like self-study, as well as part-time or full-time through our accredited tuition providers.
ZICA sponsors the top CA Zambia graduate to the One Young World Summit for Young Leaders, and also offers scholarships to the top university accountancy graduates from recognized universities.
Visit zica.co.zm now for more information, or find us on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Don't delay, your future awaits.
Now the second part is looking at what you must do in the exam presented with these questions. Okay? What I did was to look at the most unpopular topic, the most challenging topic, which when it appears, when it visits the exam hall, students tend to make a lot of mistakes. And that topic is incomplete records. This is the example I'm going to guide you on how to construct what is not complete. This is the example I have picked so that we go through together. I guide you on how to handle such a question. 1, you will be given basic data from which you will be expected to construct and come up with unknown values required for your financial statements. You'll be given, most likely you'll be given the bank account, like what I've done there. Then they'll give you the statement for assets and liabilities at the start and at the end. 3, they will give you, out of that particular statements of assets and liabilities, there will be certain figures that will be required to help you construct this particular accounts. From these two, you'll be able to say, can I now look at individual values? What are these figures that are not readily available that the examiner wants me to bring out? Okay? Like in this example, there is no mention of the opening capital. It's not there, but it's expected from a well-prepared student to say, out of the opening statement of assets and liabilities, I must use my accounting equation to actually discover my capital figure. Better still, you can use by opening up what we call opening journal entry, where you actually list the assets one side and the liability other side. The balancing figure will be your capital. That is one essential figure which you need. 2, every statement of profit or loss will require you to have the revenue figure, the sales figure. So how do we get this figure? We actually get this figure by constructing what we call the trade receivable account or control account, where you actually say, okay, what was the opening balance, people who owed us? From the opening statement of assets and liabilities, there will be an opening balance, which you will put on the debit side. Then you say, how much did we receive from these people? You will actually know from your double entry knowledge that when they are paying you, the concept says he who is giving must be credited. Therefore, in that trade receivable account, the bank or the cash received from these particular debtors will actually be credited. And then you ask yourself to say, did we allow them to not to pay? Did we allow them any discount? Okay? Was there any bad debt written off? Do we have any other adjustment that affects that particular figure? So you actually find in this particular solution on the workings, working 2 is based on the trade receivables account, where you actually debit with your opening balance, credit your receipts from the debtors, then you will have what we call the closing debt. From the closing statement, they will indicate how much is owed by the customers. You credit it so that when you add the receipts and the closing balance, subtract what was there at the beginning, it will give you the credit sales. Then you check your cash book and ask yourself to say, are there some cash sales? If there are some cash sales, you will add it to the credit sales to get your total revenue. Working 3 basically will be based on your purchases. You are actually saying, I want to find out how much did we buy during this particular period, because you don't have the complete set of records. So there again, you have to use what we call the trade payables control account. And you know that this represents a liability. So you actually credit that account with the opening balance, and then when you are paying them, they are receiving your money, debit them with the amount you have paid them. If they have allowed you any discount, you actually debit that particular discount so that in the income statement, there will be a discount received. So at the end of the day, you will have what we call the closing balance for your trade payables, which will be on the debit side before the totals, so that when you add the debit entries, there will be more debit entries in that one, minus what was actually owing at the beginning, you will actually come up with the credit purchases. Again, you ask yourself to say, was there any cash purchases that were paid from the till? If they were there, you add to the credit purchases, then you will have one ingredient which you need in your statement of profit or loss. That is the purchases, so that you are able to calculate what we call the cost of sales. Then you come to these other accounts which tend to have some crossover effect, like the rent. Usually rent is paid in advance. You find people actually, they will give you to say at the beginning there was rent paid in advance. At the end there will be rent which is an expired paid in advance. Then you will have what you have paid during the. So when you pay in advance, that represents an asset. So when you open the rent account, you will actually say, okay, here's the rent account. We paid in advance in the previous period. Therefore, this money technically still belongs to us. Therefore, there will be a balance brought forward on the debit side. Then what you have paid, you will actually put it on the debit side again because that particular service account is receiving value while the cash or bank account will be credited with the same amount paid. Therefore, when you add what was actually paid in advance and what is actually paid now, minus what is actually prepaid, which will actually be on the credit side, it will give you the balancing figure on the credit side of that account will be actually charged to your statement of profit or loss. Those are simple ledger accounts that can help you to discover how much you'll be effectively charged to your income statement. Things like insurance. Usually insurance also might actually be paid in advance. That again, it is similar to the rent paid in advance. If you have some expenses paid in arrears, it means in your opening statement, there will be a line which will show that land rates are owing at the beginning of the year. It means whatever you pay now will actually need to be, first of all, to be offsetting what was actually owing at the beginning. Therefore, that particular rent owing or land rates will be an opening balance on the credit, then what is paid on the debit. Of course, using the offset method, you will actually be knocking off that one. Then you ask yourself to say, what is this that is actually owing at the end? And that will actually be put on the debit to show that after the totals, there will be a liability, which will actually be showing in the statement of financial position. You deal with those ones by opening ledger accounts. The example, the solution is very clear on those accounts. Then you will have a working, of course, when it comes to adjustment of depreciation. You have to read the question carefully to find out what is the company policy. Is it straight line method of depreciating? Do we provide depreciation on month to month? Do we use the reducing balance? You have to understand what the requirement of the question is. Once you understand that, then you will actually be able to say, yes, now I know this category of non-current assets are actually depreciated using a straight line method on cost. This one is reducing balance. This one is actually on month-to-month ownership. Then you will be able to handle that one. Make sure you clearly indicate for each category of assets the amount of depreciation that will be required. When it comes to adjustment for irrecoverable allowances, that is another spot where students tend to get confused. You will actually be given in the trial balance what is outstanding in the irrecoverable allowance. Then they will tell you to say it is company policy to actually provide 5% allowance on receivables. Then when you calculate your 5%, you will actually be saying, what is the existing? 20,000. What is required? 25,000. Therefore, you are actually saying what is now need to be provided to be written off. It's just the difference between the 20 and 25. 5,000 will be put there as an expense for that particular, because there is an increase. If you find what you need is 20 and what you actually require is 18, there is a reduction in your allowance. Therefore, that will actually be also be written back as the income to be added to the gross profit. Those are the adjustments usually which present problems with the incomplete records. Now, when we come to the next set, which is usually asked statement of financial position, that one you need to actually have a very good understanding of the business equation. Now, in the business equation, what are these components that you must look for? One, you would have calculated the capital figure at the beginning. Two, look for any additional capital. For instance, in this particular example, this particular Michelo, who is selling lemons, actually sold a private asset and the money was put into the business account. That is an area where students will not see that this is additional capital. So when you have that additional capital, it will be added to what was obtaining at the beginning. Then when it comes to the drawings, you know that the traders have to lead a decent life. They need to live. So they will be getting money from the business in anticipation of the year-end profit. So that drawings figure, if it is given straight away in the trial balance, you are lucky. They might actually give you to say the owner was drawing weekly 50 kwacha. You need to make an assumption that in a year ordinarily there are 52 weeks. So multiply that 50 by 52, it will give you the total drawings. The mistake which is usually made, they will simply get, the student will just get that 50 and deduct from the net profit. It will be wrong. You would have lost easy marks. So remember to read carefully on how this drawing is being made. If it's monthly, you multiply by 12. It will actually give you the amount of drawings which must actually be netted off against the net profit of the year. Because he was making those drawings in anticipation of this profit. So there are times when you find what he has drawn is more than what he has made. Therefore, he's eating into his capital. Therefore, it will end up with, when you subtract the drawings, which is a bigger figure, from the net profit, it will give you the, what we call a negative net profit. Therefore, that will be deducted from the opening capital. Two, we need to actually look at the presentation of this particular statement of financial position. Students tend to mess up their questions because they don't arrange them to say there are two sides of this account. One side is for the assets. The other side is for capital and liabilities. Therefore, it is recommended that you start with the asset side on top of the statement in a statement form. You actually put your non-current asset. In that one, you are better off creating three columns: the cost of those assets, the accumulated depreciation, and the net book value. By creating those three columns, you are clearly putting your answer to say, look, I know what I'm doing. I want to actually give you what is relevant is the net book value. When it comes to your current assets, the common mistake there is you find in the trial balance, the bank balance is in the credit side. Students fail to acknowledge that once it appears in the credit side, it is actually a bank overdraft. Therefore, they will include it under the current assets, which will make them actually go off the balancing figure twice that amount, because that figure is supposed to be in the current liabilities on the other side. Then you come to the second part of that statement. You actually be saying, at the end of it all, this particular sole trader or partnership, there will be one part representing the capital, the amount owing to these owners. Then there will be a second part, which is liabilities. Liabilities will be into two parts, the non-current liabilities, and you list the items clearly to say you start from permanence, you start with buildings, motor vehicles, you come to any other furniture and fittings, then you come to your current asset, you start with your inventory, trade receivables, and then you come to your cash and the like. Then you come to your liability side, you actually also list them in that order. So that one, as long as you actually practice, you will find this particular statement will be very easy to score marks. The next part, outside this example we've done, is dealing with other critical activities that must be observed as you prepare for exams. Usually, you find students who will fail the exams not because they did not prepare themselves well, because of bad habits. Okay? Now, what are these things we must avoid towards the exam time, especially a day before your exam day? One, avoid eating foreign foodstuffs a day before exams. It might disorient your system in the stomach. Okay? You must actually avoid. You must have normal meal, and you actually say, look, let me actually have what I eat usually. Don't overeat. You might end up with some diarrhea of some kind. Okay? Two, before the exam, remember you need to do some exercises. Remember you need to have enough sleep. Enough sleep. Otherwise, you will actually go to the exam hall exhausted, and you will not actually get the best out of your knowledge. Right? The last part of those non-exam preparations, avoid negative talk, especially if you find people are discussing the exam to be written the following day. And they say, no, this paper is very difficult, ABCD. Don't entertain such people. You actually find people with positive talk who say, there is nothing impossible, I can do it, we can do it. Join that group. That is a success group. It will not discourage you. You need to actually avoid people who actually talk negative of these papers. I remember one time when I was graduating, some man came up and said, ZICA, temunove. That type of, to me, it was not a good theme to actually develop at a graduation ceremony. People are supposed to say they must be proud. And that is actually what I'm trying to say, avoid negative talk. Let me actually say one thing, okay? What you tell your mindset as you go to the exam will determine the quality of your pass. Tell your mindset that there is nothing impossible. I have prepared myself enough. I'm going for a pass. And I'm going to challenge this examiner. In that way, you will actually be going with confidence. You need to commit yourself and say, I decided to do this course. I have what it takes. Therefore, wishing you all the best in your exams. That's where I end. Wishing you all the best in your next exams. Thank you.